Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into the surprisingly quiet 2022 launch of ChatGPT, a launch that completely turned into the biggest explosion in internet history. I mean, picture this. It's November 30th, 2022. There were absolutely no fireworks. There was no massive Apple-style theatrical stage or anything like that. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman just sent out this really understated tweet saying, ChatGPT is now available, give it a try. They genuinely thought, maybe a few thousand tech geeks would play around with it. But instead, what happened over the next 5 days completely shattered the history of the internet.
To really put this massive scale into perspective, let's look at some numbers. While it took a giant like Netflix 3.5 years to reach 1 million users, and Instagram took about 2.5 months to hit that exact same milestone, ChatGPT absolutely sprinted to 1 million users in just 5 days. 5 days! That is exactly 120 hours. People were just completely stunned. Suddenly, everyone was using this simple little text box to write beautiful poetry, generate incredibly complex computer code, and even ask it deeply personal life questions. But behind this explosive success, there is actually a terrifying reality that the public didn't know about. OpenAI's own top engineers were incredibly anxious. They were actually afraid the project was going to fail. And why? Well, because the previous version, GPT-3, had become known internally as this notorious, super unpredictable genius.
All right, let's jump into Section 1, the big challenge of old machines. So to really understand how we got here, we have to flash back a bit to the early struggles of AI. Going all the way back to the 1950s, we've dreamt of artificial intelligence. But the massive hurdle was always that computers could calculate text, but they couldn't actually comprehend it. Like if you told early AI that a bank was on fire, it would just completely freeze up in confusion. It literally had absolutely no idea if you were trying to say a financial institution where you deposit your money was burning down, or if the edge of a river, a riverbank, was on fire. In the tech world, this is known as a fundamental lack of context. Now, what's really interesting here is how modern AI solved this exact problem, and it used a kind of superpower called self-attention. You see, older models would just read word by word, and honestly, by the time they got to the end of a sentence, they'd pretty much forgotten how it started. But with self-attention, the AI reads the entire paragraph all at once. Look at this sentence. The king pulled out his sword because it was heavy. The AI instantly knows that the word "it" refers to the heavy sword, not the king. This is the absolute magic that gives modern models the ability to genuinely understand context. But even with this brilliant new architecture, we hit a serious roadblock. In 2020, GPT-3 was released. Now, this was the biggest digital brain ever created up to that point, armed with literally billions of words. But there was a massive issue. It was kind of acting like a sociopath. It would confidently lie to you, it would spew hateful speech, and sometimes it would genuinely terrify its users. Engineers called this the alignment problem. The raw intelligence of the AI was scaling up incredibly fast, but it just wasn't aligned with human values. So the billion-dollar question for OpenAI became, how do we build a machine that isn't just highly intelligent, but is also, well-mannered? Moving right along to Section 2, Transformer AI's Superpower.
Okay, so the solution for this massive brain actually came from a secret 2017 research paper by a team of 8 engineers over at Google. They published this now legendary paper titled Attention is All You Need, and this paper introduced the transformer architecture to the world. It essentially became the steering wheel for the entire AI industry. It allowed models to connect billions of parameters and weights functioning incredibly similarly to the neurons in a human brain. But of course, a great architecture isn't really enough on its own. To feed this digital monster, they had to give it the entire internet. Almost every word in human history was just shoved into this machine, creating what we now call a large language model. Which brings us to Section 3, manners gained from human feedback.
But here's the catch. Even with the whole internet's worth of data and millions of dollars in Microsoft Azure computing power, the AI was still essentially just a really knowledgeable parrot that couldn't actually hold a conversation. OpenAI desperately needed to transform this massive statistical machine into a helpful conversationalist. So, to pull this off, they used a technique called RLHF, which stands for Reinforcement Learning from Human Feedback. They hired this invisible army of human trainers, and these trainers spent thousands of hours just chatting with the AI. When the AI gave a rude or a totally wrong answer, the humans corrected it. When it was genuinely helpful, they rewarded it. They were essentially teaching this massive supercomputer basic manners, exactly like a teacher guiding a child. And this specific training, that's the secret sauce that created InstructGPT, which eventually evolved into the ChatGPT we all know and use today.
So when you actually sit down at your keyboard and type a prompt, let's say you ask it to write a poem,
this incredible 0.3-second journey kicks off. First, your words are broken down into tiny little pieces called tokens. Then, those tokens are converted into lists of numbers, known as vectors. Next, these numbers are just blasted through thousands of transformer layers. Now, it's really important to note that at this point, the AI isn't actually thinking about what a poem is at all. It's just rapidly calculating probability. If the first word is moon, it calculates the exact mathematical probability that the next word should be beautiful.
However, because the machine is essentially just playing a massive high-speed guessing game, it has a pretty critical vulnerability. Sometimes, it confidently invents facts out of thin air. We call this an AI hallucination. It basically guesses the next word based on probability and ends up giving a completely wrong yet incredibly realistic-sounding answer. It's a fundamental flaw of the architecture right now, kind of a digital disease that computer sciences are still frantically trying to cure today.
All right, Section 4, GPT getting continuously smarter. Now, despite those flaws, the sheer speed of iteration from OpenAI has been nothing short of breathtaking. I mean, look at this. We went from a theoretical paper back in 2017 to the messy GPT-3 in 2020. Then came the absolute explosion of ChatGPT in late 2022. By March 2023, OpenAI drops GPT-4, which was 10 times smarter and suddenly acing the world's toughest medical and law exams. They even gave it eyes and ears with GPT-4.0, allowing it to literally read the emotion in your voice over a video call. And now we are firmly in the era of GPT-5.2, powered by OpenAI's deep reasoning projects like Strawberry. It doesn't just guess blindly anymore. It actually stops, thinks, and corrects its own mistakes before it ever answers you.
To put that rapid evolution into perspective for a second, if the original ChatGPT 3.5 that completely shocked the world back in 2022 was, say, a smart high schooler, today's GPT 5.2 is basically a PhD-level scientist. It is effortlessly solving complex mathematical equations and incredibly dense coding problems in mere seconds, and is doing this for a staggering 900 million weekly active users. It has quite literally become the world's new baseline for common sense and knowledge.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, AI, Cold War, and Future. As you can probably guess, this unprecedented technological leap triggered a massive global panic. When ChatGPT proved its immense power, the global tech giants completely scrambled. Over at Google, CEO Sundar Pichai famously declared a code red. They were terrified that their 25-year-old search monopoly could just vanish overnight, which sparked this massive rush resulting in the creation of Google Gemini. Meanwhile, across the globe, China viewed this as a matter of urgent national security. Tech heavyweights like Baidu and Alibaba rapidly launched their own models like ErnieBot. This is no longer just a friendly software competition, guys. We are actively in the middle of an AI Cold War. The belief across the board is pretty simple. Whichever nation holds the most powerful AI will absolutely dominate the coming century.
And as the stakes of this Cold War rise, the technology is naturally facing some significant global friction. We've seen serious regulatory pushback recently. For example, Italy temporarily banning the technology over data privacy concerns. At the exact same time, Elon Musk launched a high-profile lawsuit against OpenAI, arguing that the company had strayed from its open-source roots to become a closed-source profit machine for its major investor, Microsoft. Whatever side you land on there, it's clear the technology is advancing so fast that human laws and ethics are really just struggling to keep up. Which kind of brings us to the ultimate endgame here. As engineers push relentlessly toward AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is an AI that can completely outperform humans at every conceivable economic and cognitive task, we are left standing at probably the most critical crossroads in human history. The lines between human intellect and machine processing are permanently blurring. As OpenAI's own Sam Altman stated, this will probably be the greatest invention of humanity, or the last.
Because the reality we're facing is this. By the year 2026, AI agents won't just be answering our questions anymore, they will be actively managing our lives. They'll read our emails, book our vacations, and write our research papers totally autonomously. We have rubbed the lamp, and the genie is well and truly out of the bottle. Which leaves us with the ultimate question to ponder today. As this technology rapidly evolves into an all-knowing entity, will it remain our obedient tool, or will it become our master? How do you think this will shape your future? And honestly, are we truly ready for what comes next?